Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today we have some wonderful channelings from Quo. Quo is a social memory complex compiled of a variety of different social memory complexes comprised of a group from what they call the Confederation of Planets in service of the light of the one infinite creator. These channelings are related to the raw material and the law of one channelings, and I have several episodes where I discuss these particular channelings. Today I've compiled a variety of them. There are so many, and we talk about things like the heart and a variety of other topics related to the law of one. Group question, delivered on October 17th, 2015. In the past, those of Quo have drawn a distinction between the mind of the world and the mind of the heart. Quo describes the mind of the world as the analytical judging mind which we have been conditioned to use almost exclusively. They describe the mind of the heart as being a consciousness of love. Corroborating Quo's thought, information is now available from different fields which say that the physical heart is much more than a pump, but it is also a specialized brain with endocrine, electromagnetic, and neurological perceptive functions. We would like to go deeper into the information Quo has already shared to help us open our hearts by asking how to shift the primary focus of our consciousness from the mind of the world to the mind of the heart, both its physical and metaphysical aspects, allocating to the computer-like brain a role seemingly more suited to its design, the role of a helpmate. Jim Channeling says, "I am Quo, and we greet each of you in love and in light through this instrument. It is our great privilege and pleasure to be able to speak to you this afternoon. We would, as always, ask you to use your discrimination as you listen to our words, and be certain that you accept only those which you feel comfortable with, for we would not wish to place any stumbling block upon your path. We thank you for this favor, my friends. Today you asked about the difference between the mind of the world and the mind and functioning of the heart, and how one may access the mind of the heart and become aware of the extended functioning of this particular central organ of your physical vehicle. We are most happy to address this query, and will begin by suggesting that for most of you, the nature of the mind of the world is quite well known, for each of you has been, shall we say, enculturated with this mind, for it is the means by which entities of your various countries, cities, and regions are made familiar with the expectations of a growing being within your culture, or any culture for that matter, my friends. This is the means by which the mass mind of the population of your culture is passed on to each succeeding generation, so that there is a certain kind of order available to the entire culture, the expectations of which are specifically transmitted by those closest to you, those being your parental entities, your teachers, your friends, neighbors, and so forth. In this day and age, this is accomplished quite successfully by the increasing use of the electronic media, which ensures that the message of conformity is well spread, shall we say, and taken into the mind complex, which is processed through the physical brain. Thus, each entity begins the physical incarnation of the basic elements of the process of becoming one of many that can be looked to in order to understand the necessary ingredients for being accepted within the various segments of your culture. Thus, one is able to take advantage of various opportunities for education and socialization, the occupation and the earning of the means by which to facilitate the growing family. The process is meant to be cyclical and enhanced with each generation's production of new progeny. This, as you are well aware, is the momentum of the mind which causes the entity who wishes to proceed upon a different path, some resistance, shall we say. For each entity, though well prepared to pursue the cultural bias, is also the, shall we say, seedbed in which there grows the individual entity that seeks expression in many and sundry means. This self finds the cultural bias occasionally difficult, if not a burden, when the individual identity takes on facets of expression that are not generally understood by the larger culture, or perhaps even by the smaller culture of the family and friends. Each has within its heart, shall we say, the desire to pursue what you may call the seeker's path, the desire to know more of what is the meaning of life, the whys and wherefores that are not covered over much by the mind of the world. This is where the mind and functioning of the heart is most important. The societal complex in which you all participate carries with it a complex set of expectations that, as we have suggested, most often do not precisely fit the process of opening up to the larger experience that every individual feels as a need and a desire at some level of being. The gap, shall we say, that exists between the world as it has come to be represented normatively to the aspiring self, and the world as it is felt to call from somewhere deep within the aspiring self, is a gap which is fed by many things, articulated in many ways, kept as a gap by a great many factors. Of these factors, we would call attention to two major callings. The one kind coming from what one might call judgments of value, which have become sedimented in your social complex, yield a structured set of requirements that are held before every individual self in such a way that in order to be worthy, the self is expected to conform to a pattern of selfhood which is already in place. As it happens, this pattern of selfhood virtually never is a perfect fit for any individual self, and as a result, every individual self, almost without exception, feels in some corner of its being that it has failed, that it is unworthy. When this judgment lies heavy upon the self, it causes that delicate membrane, so to speak, that constitutes the skin of the embryonic self to contract, to pull back inwards, and to tighten itself into a small knot. In this condition, the embryonic self finds itself locked into a heart center, which is no center, and which cannot express itself as heart. There are nevertheless leavings, traces, residues of judgments, and fragments of judgments, and feelings of inadequacy that persist from one experience to the next, and accumulate over time to form very often quite a rigid crust. The embryonic self finds some degree of safety hiding behind this crust, but at the same time feels trapped by it. Every experience in which the judgment of the world is taken in and held against the self causes this crust to become firmer, to become more brittle, to become more imprisoning for the self that would prefer to feel itself to be free of judgment, to be free of that kind of demanding expectation that the world continually seems to place upon it. This imprisoned self, however, is not without resources of its own. Over and over again, it will make an effort. Over and over again, it will look to find those little apertures in the incrustation around it, which will give it life, and which will let the light of the world flow, and even as the inward light of the self begins to flow outward, with every additional act of acceptance of self by self, the crust begins to thin, so that over time, when this process is consciously empowered, eventually the crust may become thin enough that it no longer holds the heart in a constricted space, and the heart is allowed to expand and to inform the world with its love. When the heart reaches outward to the world in love, the world is reflected back as love, lovingly, and heart then begins to sing that song, which is its native tongue, so to speak. There is, as we have said, a second source of constriction of heart energy, and this source comes more from within. It represents those experiences which have proven to be too painful for the emerging self to countenance, to bring forward, to be felt. And so there is a tendency to postpone, if you will, the feeling of the thoughts, the feeling of the feelings, the feeling of the pain that is very often a part of the process of catalyst that each here enjoys upon a daily basis. Postponed feelings, however, are not feelings that go away forever. Postponed catalyst remains within the heart center as work yet to be done, and a heart that is burdened with much unprocessed catalyst, with much unfelt feeling, is a heart which feels leaden and heavy and suffers from strictures of its own making. In some sense, my friends, we will say to you that this catalyst is amongst the most difficult you will need to process, for you cannot work through it without opening the heart. And each act of opening the heart, each act of releasing the tightness of the heart muscle, is an act also which releases those pent-up emotions, those pent-up memories, those pent-up repressions that have been felt at one point or another to be too difficult to deal with. So the opening of the heart is not always undertaken in a condition of absolute joy. The opening of the heart very often will show to the self what the self has not been able to confess it carries. The pain and anguish or sorrow. The healing of anguish is something, however, that only the heart itself can accomplish. You cannot heal the anguish of the soul by thinking the correct thought any more than you can heal the damaged heart by a specific act of cognition. The heart is the organ of acceptance. It opens the gateway to a world which is loving at its core. But we will say that there are in this love many layers of what you experience as emotion, and the emotion does not always seem immediately to be of a loving nature, or to be of the nature of that which encourages a further opening of the heart. Accordingly, the first act of opening the heart can very often quickly lead to a reaction which has the effect of closing it down again, or of restricting the area in which the heart will allow itself to be opened. This, my friends, is the moment where we would encourage you to look to the wee small act that might be called faith. For in this small act, there is the foolish expectation that within anguish there may yet be found joy, that within sorrow there may yet be found gladness, that within fear, within horror, within agony, there may yet be found hope. The more one learns to expect joy as a consequence of merely one's capacity to hope, the more one is able to relax that heart muscle, the more one is able to allow acceptance to build upon acceptance until the heart feels itself to be an organ of reception for the ebb and flow of cosmic energy within the individual self. This is a refreshing flow for the self that has too long felt constricted, both from without by the heavy weight of societal judgment, and from within by the weight of unprocessed and apparently unprocessable experience. When this cosmic wind, shall we say, is allowed to blow through the heart, and the heart itself learns to express the rhythms of the universe itself may increasingly be discovered to lie within, and less does the individual self need to feel itself as something that must maintain itself by resistance to what lies without. The natural flow of the heart corresponds and resonates with the natural flow of the cosmos. There are many ways that one can discover this flow. The artist discovers it in the act of creation. The naturalist discovers it in the act of participating in nature. And those who participate in the societal activities discover it in the natural flow of give and take, as one offers one's services to others whose reception of these services is their gratitude, which in turn feeds back into the flow of the one who has given. The giving, the receiving, and the giving again constitute the great flow in which every individual mind-body-spirit complex may participate, and does participate more and more as the heart begins to open. In the opening of the heart, one may experience healing, and in the closing of the heart, one always experiences the constricting, not just of the mind, but also of the body. In your society, my friends, there are so very many factors working against the opening of the heart that it cannot be surprising that so many difficulties of the heart find themselves expressed in what you might call heart trouble. Sometimes you can make progress towards an opening of the heart itself simply by learning to relax the body. As you attempt to relax the body, it can sometimes be difficult to begin from the heart itself, for after all, this is a bodily function, which you call automatic, which is to say it is a function which is not generally directly controllable by an act of consciousness. But if you begin in meditation to relax first the feet, allowing the feet to rest comfortably and gently upon the ground, allowing the feet to serve as receptors to that energy which flows from the earth upward so that it moves into your calves, through your knees, and into your thighs, and into the lower part of your torso, moving still upward through your solar plexus center, arriving finally at your heart, which now can be seen to have released a kind of tension which it did not know it was holding. One has thereby achieved effectively in bodily manifestation an analog of that of which we have been discussing in relation to the more metaphysical or mental components of the process of opening the heart. The resolve to open the heart must take root in the mind, for the mind is the original of the mind-body complex. But no mind can be shown to itself without that principle of manifestation, which is called the body. When the mind is resolved in its heart to release those strictures which it has held, the body is only too glad to comply and feeds back to the heart a joy of the release of the tension that has held it in check for oh so long. This experience of opening the heart can come very slowly, or it can come sometimes with a great rush. We find that if the experience is too sudden, it can sometimes lead to a kind of reaction or recoil, which has the effect of closing the heart again in due course. So it is well, my friends, to make a study of the practice of the opening of the heart, that it might mean something sustainable. A reliably open heart is a resource for the seeker like no other, for it is the platform upon which all further work of a positive nature may be undertaken. It is the active acceptance of self by self and of world by self, and the feeling of being accepted by the self and the world that allows the more radiant activity to begin to become manifest. An open-hearted person is in your world a rare jewel, but a jewel beyond price. My brothers and sisters, we commend you to the project of opening the heart, for it is an adornment to the entire creation when you do so. Question: is there a more particular set of exercises that you would recommend for purposes of opening the heart? I am quo and am aware of your query, my brother. We would recommend that you find those passages of a particularly expressive nature concerning the heart written by other authors who have made a study of such, concerning yourself perhaps with a few paragraphs, and then contemplate the meaning of these messages upon a regular basis, perhaps daily. When you feel you have digested in a mental fashion the gist of the message, then, within your meditative state, take this fruit of your mentation and allow it to have its center stage, shall we say. Allow it to move from the mind to the feelings, to the intuitions, to more of the arena of the heart. Find more than one or two such passages. Use these in conjunction with further mentation and meditation until you feel that you have equipped your heart center with the trappings, shall we say, of unconditional love, of the giving and receiving of this love. Perhaps you could make it a personal experience in that you could then find a friend or family member who would perhaps enjoy the appreciation, further discussion, and elaboration of a mental nature upon these crystallized feelings and expressions of unconditional love. Use the responses of friends, family, and so forth to further enrich the heart center activity so that there's a kind of priming the pump, shall we say, no pun intended. Then you're able to feel the flow beginning in the heart center so that there is the automatic response within this center to your daily round of activities. When you see or hear a situation that, as one might say, tugs at the heartstrings, allow the heart its response, that which perhaps has been neglected or repressed in past experience. Allow it to come forward and to be able to share this burgeoning energy of acceptance, of love, within your own being before another being or situation. Your world, my friends, has many such situations easily accessed through your news media. If necessary, however, we are also quite sure that each entity has within its own realm of personal experience those areas that could benefit by receiving the love offerings of your heart center. We are recommending is that you become more and more familiar with the qualities of love in an unconditional sense and what they might feel like after having considered their mentally descriptive parameters. It is the feeling that is most important here, for as you move from the mind of the world to the mind of the heart, You are dealing with emotions that can be expressed in no other center as in the heart center. The heart is indeed of the same nature as a muscle. As you exercise its qualities of unconditional and all-compassionate love, these qualities are enhanced, and your ability to experience and express them are also enhanced. Question. The first part is about the cycles, since as above, so below. Only by understanding the universe, cosmos, celestial bodies, and finding correlations with the activities of the mind, the human body, cells, tissues, and molecules, atoms, and subatomic particles down to the etheric body can we comprehend the whole. Could you comment on the correlation between cycles and relationship to the body? We are those of Quo. The physical makeup of your visible universe is most impressive, the systems seeming rigidly hierarchical until there is a closer look, at which time anomalies begin to mount. The part of the crystallized creation which is withheld is great. This withholding is not in order that visibility be restricted. Rather, the withholding is due to the lack of sufficient sight or opportunity for sight. In other words, neither the third density physical vehicles nor the consciousness inhabiting these physical vehicles is at your present equipped with receptors capable of assimilating the amount of data which exists. We say this because the attempt to match perceived cyclical hierarchies is made non-useful by this fact. It is indeed so that that which exists, as you say above, is indeed reflected in that which is, as you have said, below. However, that which is above is other than can be conjured or mentally figured out. That energy which created all that there is may be seen to be the center of all that there is. This field of love is of a nature which is produced and is the stuff of all levels of vibration which stem therefrom. This nature is an essence or a fullness of field. The energy is saturated. That is, there is fullness of love. You seek in understanding cycles to better understand healing. However, it is an understanding, shall we say, of fields and of the amount of saturation or fullness of love in the fields, in field strength, shall we say, that aids in the efficacy of healing. That is, the more saturated the awareness of love is, the more fullness of health there is. To work on the influences of heavenly objects, as you call these, is instead to do fairly subtle work in the area of the archetypal mind. The influences upon these archetypes from celestial objects vary according to the native ground or earth of a particular entity, and the study of these correspondences yields a wealth of detailed information in each individual which undertakes such study. This touches only tangentially upon healing information, and that it is so that in working with the archetypes and their relationships, there is much opportunity for the skilled student to take fire from a newly perceived gracefulness of relationship that clarifies in some way the student's thinking, or, as you so often say, understanding. Jim asks, a minor harvest cycle is related to the solar year, which is the amount of time it takes our sun to go around the zodiac, about 25,000 years. The master cycle is said to be 75,000 years. Is there a star around which our sun or solar system moves that is the center of this 75,000 year cycle? And if so, can you tell us? Is it Alcyone or some other star? We are those of Quo. While it is so that the numbers 25,000 and the turning of sun about solar system, we correct this instrument Earth around the solar system are similar. There is not the importance placed upon the connection between these two similar numbers. The timing, shall we say, of cycles of spiritual living or advancement are as they are because of quite sensitive factors involving the energies of the group of entities moving through third density. In other words, since your Earth sphere has certain populations of entities from various planetary influences, the timing of these cycles of spiritual evolution is set in such and such a mold. As the group population's biases collectively are altered through what you know as the timing of the cycles also evolves. The settling of these cycles is ever liquid and is regulated quite precisely according to every single entity and thought of each entity. This energetic whole has a nascent life which expresses its times of blooming and learning in such and such a way, while Stars wheel above in the heavens according to your physical sight. The constellations of thought and intention, infinitesimally small, added until a towering largeness and fullness of information has been assimilated. This living entity expresses as a field, and this entity's expression create the exact timing of the cycles of learning. The cycles of learning have only tangentially again to do with the concerns of healing, which we believe we understand these questions to be directed to. It is difficult to express how this perfectly logical seeming set of correspondences actually has an effect upon the archetypal mind, is most deep, and for that reason most difficult to penetrate. We are happy to work upon the metaphysical implication of cycles concerning the archetypal mind. However, it is our feeling that this is not germane to a study of healing, except as a rather advanced and subtle portion of healing, which has to do with abstract or mental body healing at certain levels. We would suggest working from other assumptions than the assumptions that cycles of spiritual learning are correlated with cycles of concerning healing. Jim asks, is there any significance in a 26 million year cycle, and if it has any relationship to a specific star or location? We are those of Quo, and again, we do not find a significance to the 26 million year cycle. Perhaps we could suggest that the center of the universe is the center of each entity's heart. The open heart of the great self, which each self is that center which is a unity. All of the portions of the Creator, shall we say rather misleadingly, seem to themselves to be in time and space each unique, each separate and each apart, yet in truth the center of the constellations is the open heart. All measurement, all numbering, all ways of detailing and patterning the observed creation fall to dust before the open heart. Love is of a certain nature. The fullness, breadth, depth, and height of the nature of love is both revealed and concealed by its visibility and ready accessibility, for each self contains this center without distortion within the open heart. It is both blessing and curse that those who seek so longingly and yearn so profoundly for scientific information to aid in being of service must have their hopes thwarted by the elusive and ever-receding face of spiritual knowledge. For this knowledge is not that which has to do with the kind of measuring which is used to calculate the hierarchies of the observable physical universe, but love moves and its traces dwell within all things. The keys to healing echo the ways or nature of love itself. We find that to speak further at this juncture is to infringe upon the free development of the awareness, which would ask further queries upon this healing subject, and consequently we feel that to speak further at this working is not appropriate. Question given in September of 2015. We'd like to know how to determine where the inner light, that is our birthright, in the violet ray meets with the intelligent energy from the logos, that is our daily gift of energy that comes in from the base chakra through our feet and through the groin area. How do we determine where that meeting place is? Jim channeling says, I am Quo and greet each in love and in light, my friends. We are happy to be with this instrument and this group. You ask this day how it is possible for the seeker of truth to determine the level at which the seeking takes place as recorded in your energy centers or chakra system as a means by which to modulate and accelerate the inpouring energy of the logos that moves through the south poles of your energy field in a magnetic fashion and seeks to unite with that birthright which each has in the violet ray chakra, the guiding star of the self, shall we say. Each of you, as you move through your daily round of activities, experiences catalyst in a variety of ways. The catalyst is so called because it allows you to glean from these interactions with other selves that which is of value to you in your own journey of seeking. There are many such interactions for each seeker in each day's round of activities. If you wish to analyze these interactions for their ability to assist your journey of seeking, it is well to reserve a portion of each daily period at the end of the day to enter into a meditative state and to examine what has occurred for you in this day in the way of interactions which has moved you away from the compassion and understanding which is the goal of the seeker of truth. If you felt yourself moved in one particular way or another, you may look at that movement that has, shall we say, taken you from your center of self and assign to that movement a certain center of energy, which is, shall we say, the home ground or bastion of that particular kind of energy expenditure. The channel then moves to another person and they say, I am Quo, and we speak now through this instrument. We'd like to begin by thanking this instrument for challenging us in the name of the one Creator and along the path of service to others, for it is our understanding there are many voices in the universe. It being a universe full of spirits of every description, not all of whom are seeking in the way that those of this group are doing, that the contact may bear the character that you wish it to have. It is important to exercise discrimination at many different levels, but most of all with respect to the question of the open heart. Those who seek with an open heart, my friend, are those who seek in the way that we do, and we are grateful for your seeking, for it assists us in providing the kind of service which it is our calling to provide. The question of the energy centers is indeed among the most central for those of third density who wish to engage in that kind of spiritual work which can best be done in meditation. The energy centers can be likened to a musical instrument in the sense that the different centers each contribute to the whole by providing a tone. One would say that when played well provides a harmonic expression of the spiritual being. So while it is true that there is a hierarchical structure to the energy centers, it is also true that in a well-tuned being all centers are contributing simultaneously. So we would caution against attempting to occupy in your meditation simply the highest of the energy centers that you feel is accessible to you at the expense of the lower energy centers, which we would stress do still form an important part of your being and indeed the more basic part of your energy system. So if we may begin by looking at the red ray energy center, as we have called it, which you may find at the base of your spine. This is the center at which energy is first taken up into the more etheric body, and while work of a more individual or particular sort may not be done at the red ray level, it is yet an important consideration to have this energy center open, for it gives the entire system the initial fusion. In fusion, we correct this instrument of energy that comes in from below. The factors that tend to close off the red ray are those of fear, those of excessive anger, those of excessive lust. Such factors as those can so overwhelm the energy system that no further work may meaningfully be done while they prevail. So a bright and cheerful attitude toward the spiritual work is what we may call the best beginning. Now, with such an attitude in place, one may move up the system of energy centers to that ray, which we have called the orange, and we find that the attitudes that one has toward other selves with whom one has a personal relation are central to this energy center, and also the sense of self that one entertains for oneself is a factor of importance for dealing with the intake of energy at this level. Blockages may occur at this center when difficulties are discovered, either in the relation of the self to itself or in the relation of the self to another. If these blockages are in place, it is well not to attempt to go higher, for to do so will mean that one is working with higher energies in a way that is distorted at a level below the proper sphere. And it is not possible to correct these imbalances while in the configuration of the higher energy center. Therefore, while for example it may seem highly desirable to the seeker to be doing work in the blue ray or in the indigo ray center in meditation, this work will not be effective until the clearing of the lower energy centers has been achieved. When one feels joy in relation to others of one's immediate acquaintance, when one feels joy in being who one is, one can then make the effort to move higher in the chain of energy centers and undertake work within the yellow ray center of activity. The yellow ray center of activity is that center in which societal actions can be engaged, and every individual within this circle of seeking has a highly articulated societal self, in a highly complex set of social relations that situate the way the energies are configured for each individually. This can constitute a very involved, complicated system of study. It is not that we would suggest that this system of study has to be exhaustively completed at every sitting, but one does well to be clear that one is not carrying the effects of lingering discord at the third or yellow ray energy center before attempting to move higher up the scale, so to speak. The principal effort typical of third density meditative work is the opening of the heart chakra, or the green ray energy center. For only when this center is opened can work in the higher centers be engaged in a way that reflects the polarity we have called service to others. To be sure, there are those within your density that have chosen another polarity, that polarity being what we have called service to self. Those who function in the manner of serving primarily the self are those who disdain the opening of the heart center, finding it to be foolish to dwell there, for it seems to those who have chosen this polarity to be such as to give away the authority or the power of one's being. Now it may so seem to one whose sense of self is such that it creates a kind of rotary pattern that moves from yellow ray center back down to the orange ray center, back up through the yellow, and so on and so on. We call your attention to this configuration not because we feel that any within this circle of seeking are in fact polarizing in the direction of service to self, but we do find that the energy pattern typical of that configuration does to some extent persist in many, if not all, who seek within your density, and so it is well to be aware of that pattern, and it is well to be aware that that is a pattern through which one penetrates to gain access to the opening of the heart center. With the open heart, one gazes for the first time with new eyes upon the creation, with eyes of innocence and joy. It is with this energy that one may begin to make a springboard attempt into the higher energy centers. The danger of which some have become aware of an attempt to open the higher energy centers without a full investiture of the heart center is that one carries a polarity of a different sort than is the one desired into these centers. And if the polarity chosen is not fully consistent with itself, an imbalance of significant proportions can be the result. As a consequence of this thought, we would caution that it is always well to work on that work which is given to one to do, and not to judge the meditation as being better or worse based on how high one feels one has reached in the hierarchical arrangement of energies. If one's daily allotment has given to one a disturbance of the orange ray, that is where it is well to focus one's efforts. If the disturbance is of the character one can find in complicated social arrangements characteristic of the third ray or yellow ray activity, it is well to focus one's balancing effort in that ray. By doing so, one does the work of creating the pathway to the open heart. Not every meditation, my friends, will be one of glory. Not every meditation will be one of pure joy. But much of the work that is done in meditation sets the table, so to speak, for the feast to come, and we commend you to the activity of doing the work requisite for the more sanctified work, as we might call it, that begins with the blue ray and moves into the indigo ray when it reaches its fuller height. The indigo ray is that ray of the spiritual seeker, which embodies the highest aspirations to which that seeker is able to reach. The indigo ray is the site of the sacred work which one does by invoking the power and presence of the Creator. A kind of drawing energy, if we may so call it, that reaches down from above and constitutes an inspiration and an invitation for the upreach of the energies coming from below. In the indigo ray, there is a great feeling of blessings available. One can become quite intoxicated by this feeling of blessing. It is not unknown among your people to have serious spiritual seekers have experiences in which they break through to the indigo ray and feel themselves to be overwhelmed by the splendor of the energy there to be discovered. On such occasions, you do find those who feel they can now sally forth with the message that they can uniquely bring to a struggling humanity. But we would suggest to you that when this happens, it is often the case that a precipitous conclusion is drawn to the effect that a message of a particularly limited kind is the truth to be conveyed, and we would suggest that the limitations of the message are often reflective of the particular characteristics of that individual seeker involving work that has been left undone at the lower energy centers. So we would suggest that the questioning of raising the level of energy center activation is for the evolving seeker not only the question to be addressed, but rather it is of equal significance and increasing importance to engage in the process of balancing all of the energy centers in relation to one another. This requires continually going back down to the lowest and moving back up to the highest, and going back down and moving back up, going back down so that one learns to play that tone poem, which is the energy system, with more and more skill, and more clarity, and more devotion to being the highest and the best and the clearest channel for the energies it is one's privilege to convey through the various expressions of self. It is the journey of a lifetime to unblock each succeeding energy center so that the white light of the one Creator moves unimpeded through each center of energy and remains white throughout the journey. However, do not feel that you have in any way failed if there is coloration to your light, for this is why you have incarnated. It is necessary to engage in the learning of various lessons in the overall plan of each soul's evolution. The way lessons are learned is to discover where there is a blockage in the overall energy patterns of each individual and program these into the incarnational life stream that intention might be put upon them and energies directed to balance and clear each center. In a question from 2020, plant medicines are often used for healing and evolution. It seems that some plant medicines are avatars of aspects of God. For instance, ayahuasca seems to be an avatar of the Divine Mother or Divine Feminine. Can you comment on that? Quo says, I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother. There are indeed various plant entities upon your planetary sphere which have been imbued with the qualities of the various facets of the one infinite creator, be they male or female, be they higher or lower, multiple or one. These qualities then are available as a kind of signpost or guide along the way so that the seeker may, by ingesting these plants with the proper attitude and determination and blending of will and faith, be able to experience an expansion of its own consciousness that includes the qualities that the plant exudes, as it is a representation of some facet of the one infinite creator. These plants are found all over your planet, are in most cases and in most countries deemed illegal or dangerous, because their effect upon the human brain and mind is not understood clearly by most within the normal society. And this type of thinking or being is that which is a threat to most such entities who do not have the, shall we say, spiritual inclination to find an explanation for the reason for their being upon the planet, other than here to have a job, make a living, support a family, and get ahead. However, these various plants are known by various shaman and native peoples, indigenous peoples throughout the world to be various types of pathways to the one creator that will illuminate the nature of the creator as the ingester travels the path. There is much information and inspiration that is possible to be had by such experiences, as you are well aware. Question. I have one last question, Quo. Why do you want to talk to us? Why do you want to help us? I am Quo, and am aware of your query, my brother, and we say my brother quite seriously, because many here are our brothers and sisters from our very same home planets that are upon the planet Earth at this time, to be service to the population of the planet, which is trying as best it can to make the graduation into the fourth density of love and understanding. We have a commitment to those entities who are also of the brothers and sisters of sorrow, as are we, and as are most in this circle that have taken upon themselves the honor and duty of extending their own type of service into the incarnation upon planet Earth, going through the same forgetting process that each entity does upon this Earth, so that it does not know precisely why it is here or what it is supposed to do. Thus, when we find entities such as this gathered in circles, such as this circle, and are willing to ask to come join them, we rejoice at the opportunity of doing so, for we are reuniting with those of our home planet in many cases. There are many of us upon the planet Earth at this time, and many from other planetary entities within the higher densities that are here upon planet Earth now, attempting to aid in the harvest, which is a difficult harvest. Difficult because there's so much anger and separation upon this planet at this time. So we thank each of you for inviting our presence so that we may do what we clearly desire to do, to share with our brothers and sisters that love and light which all of you so ardently seek and so completely envelope, and we wish you all the very best on this journey of seeking, for you are valiant warriors in the spiritual sense. This is a difficult illusion in which to inhabit. It is difficult to see the one creator in every portion of the illusion. It is difficult to see the love that has created the one infinite creation. It is difficult to see the light that is what the creation is made out of. And yet, all of these things are true, and we come to share them with you, that you may use them as your rod and your staff as you walk through the valley of the shadow of death on planet Earth at this time. It is that walk that you shall continue to walk upon until the light of the fourth density beams brightly upon everyone upon the planet. And there is the opportunity for each entity to move into harmony and unity with that light, love, and power of the one infinite creator. In that love, light, and power, we shall now take our leave of this instrument and this group, thanking each of you, as always, for inviting our presence. It has been an honor to be with you. We leave you now. We are those of Quo, Adonai, Vasu, Borgas. So I'm going to stop there. There's some other channelings I was going to cover, but I think that's a good place to stop. There's a lot of information that we get, and we've talked about it before. And it's interesting when Quo answers questions very similarly, but we get a good explanation of the chakras here. We get an idea of the mind of the heart. And it's such a wonderful idea to think that the center of the universe is the center of our open heart. So I took a lot from this, as I always do. And it really is about a balancing of the different energies that we have flowing through our body and what they mean. And we're dealing with catalyst all the time from people around us, situations that we have come up. These are purposely given to us to learn about those different energy centers and the blockages that we have. It's always interesting when Quo and Ra are talking about the energy centers. It's always about catalyst and experiences that people are going through that seem to be the key elements in opening these chakra or energy centers, saying that if you do other things, it's just going to leave the catalyst there. And we're processing experiences through these energy centers. So there is an experiential component that we are perhaps ignoring when we just simply do mantras or meditate on these chakras. There are deep emotional, subconscious components of each energy center. And as we go about this process of opening the heart, we learn this process. So I'd love to get your take on some of the channelings here by Quo, and would love to know if you have anything that you want me to look into in particular, because Quo has talked about quite a bit of different stuff. I found it interesting, their response about plant medicines, which resonates with a recent interview I had with Juliette Berlin. In any case, I just want to express how much I love you and how important you are to me and how grateful I am that anybody listens to these episodes. It means so much to me. Thank you for allowing my dreams to become real. I am so grateful for that. Thank you so much. It means a lot. You can find every episode of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. Check out the playlist link in this video for Quo if you want further Quo channelings. There are tons of them. And in any case, welcome to The Reality Revolution.